Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with Racing Girls Rock podcast. And it's my honor today to have Judy Dominic as my guest. I met Judy 2 or maybe 3 years ago now. Time flies, doesn't it, Judy? I met her at PRI in Indianapolis, and I reached out to her to see if we could have her as a guest on the podcast because I know she's been involved in motorsports, and I want her to tell us how she got involved. But first, we're going to learn a little bit about Judy. So please tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you're comfortable sharing, where you live, your family, pets, whatever you're comfortable with, and then we'll go from there.
I currently live in Winston Salem, North Carolina, but I was born in Colorado and lived on a cattle ranch out in eastern Colorado when I grew up. And then I've lived all over the country ever since. Indianapolis, Kansas City, let's see, I can't even remember where else.
It's okay.
New Mexico, whatever. The reason, truthfully, my grandfather was a rodeo rider, and my dad was a race car driver. And so I grew up in the boys' locker room, no matter what I did. And I decided that I liked cars better than bulls. Bulls think they're smart, cars don't. Right. So I started being with my dad and his racing, and then it just evolved. I took a few stops along the way to be a banker and to be a lobbyist. And then I owned a motorcycle dealership, and the racing started for real at that point when I bought the motorcycle dealership.
Okay. You've had a lot of fun over the years then, I can tell.
Probably too much, but that's okay. So
life
well lived.
Yeah, and you can never have too much fun, I don't think. That's important. For sure. Yep. So Judy, you started a little bit of your story, how you got involved in motorsports. So you owned a motorcycle dealership. So how did that lead then to you getting involved? I know you've been very involved in motorsports for a number of years. How did that go from owning a motorcycle dealership to getting involved in motorsports?
Well, in my motorcycle dealership allowed me access to some various kinds of motorsports in Colorado, road racing, flat track, motocross. And then I had some friends who owned a midget and a sprint car that I sponsored. And then a friend of mine named John Harmson owned Jolly Rancher Candy. And I grew up with the Bandemere family because my dad raced against Johnny Bandemere up Pikes Peak and in different, what they called big cars then, which are now champ cars. Well, champ dirt cars. And John Harmson called me one day and he said, I have a driver I want you to meet and see if you think I should sponsor him. And I said, why me? And he said, because you have good instincts. And I said, okay. So I drove down to Jolly Rancher. I was in Boulder. My dealership was in Boulder. And Jolly Rancher was in Westminster, Colorado. And I walked in John's office and there sat John Force. John Force of 1983. The John Force who hadn't washed his hair and put on a clean t-shirt or owned a decent pair of tennis shoes. So from there, I ended up being John's very first PR person. I'm very glad that it worked out well for Jolly Rancher. He won the Mile High Nationals that year. And they went on to sponsor him on the Western Tour, and he won 2 out of the 4 because that's when they went from Denver to Seattle to Portland to Sonoma. And then Mr. Harmson was so impressed with that, he said, well, what else can we do? And I said, USAC Midgets needs a title sponsor. So Jolly Rancher Candy became the title sponsor of USAC Midgets. And my friends from Fort Collins with their midget, we all went to Turkey Night at Ascot and finished second, but I was the representative for Jolly Rancher and got to give away a ton of candy and found out that I really liked that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then I had a motorcycle road race team. So John sponsored my motorcycle road race team in the AMA. And we did pretty well for a privateer team. And along the way, I met this kid I did some work in the truck series with Corelli's because they were from Denver. Rick Corelli and Kathy Corelli and Marshall Chesron owned the truck when he left the South, what was then the Winston West Tour. And they started in the NASCAR truck series at that point and went to winter heat out in Tucson for 4 races with them and Remax. And through them, I met some other people. I met Jeff Gordon's stepdad, and he introduced me to some people. And eventually I met this guy named Tony Stewart. And we were on the track just before the start of a race at IRP. And I was introduced to Tony, and he looked at me, and he was that skinny little kid, you know, with all that black curly hair. And he and Kenny Irwin started on the front row. And so Kenny Irwin sauntered over, and Tony said to me, he said, you know, you're going to want to know me someday. And Irwin says, no, you don't want to know him. You want to know me. And I ended up working basically with the both of them for quite some time until Kenny went to, you know, got to NASCAR as well. And then he had his own PR. But then I was with Tony, and I was his business manager and his PR person and chief babysitter for 7 years.
Wow.
So that's kind of what started the whole thing. And then I went from Tony, did some contract work for Weld Wheels and for some other thing, you know, for some different entities and different kinds of racing, World of Outlaws, USAC, Silver Crown, different places that I really loved. And Chevrolet called and said, you want a job? And I said, really? And they said, we are going to start a factory truck program in the truck series, NASCAR truck series. And one of our drivers, Jack Sprague, really wants you to be his PR person. And we want you to manage the program, and which is where I met my business partner. So we want the two of you to manage it. And the rest is history. Sam and I hit it off. We became business partners. We did that program, and then it has grown. Our involvement then has grown from 4 factory Chevrolet trucks to covering NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, and NHRA for Chevrolet and for Shell. And that's where we are today at trackside. And we have 6 employees, and we do all of the trackside PR for those 2 companies in those 4 series. So that's what we do. That's all I got here.
And there's no downtime, is there, really?
No, but it's okay. I don't know what else I would do.
Right.
You know, I really don't. I'm very blessed to have a great family in Minnesota, 2 brothers and lots of nieces and nephews, tons of friends, but, you know, I don't have children or grandchildren or any of that. So my family is at racetracks everywhere.
Oh, for
I
sure.
always have been, you know, so I've been lucky enough to help my family when I can, and then have been lucky enough to work with some amazing, amazing drivers in all of those series throughout the years. And I feel unbelievably blessed because every year I think, can it get any better? And somehow it does. Most of my focus now is on sports cars and IndyCar, but I still have my fingers in NASCAR and NHRA.
Yeah. And, you know, when you say about family, I hear this over and over from people. It's just such a family. And it's funny how you think that racing is huge. But when you really start to meet people, like I met someone in Phoenix this weekend. After the race, we went somewhere to get a bite to eat, and a guy and his son had NASCAR shirts on. And, you know, so Daniel Hemrick had just won the race, and what a great race. And
it was an amazing race.
And what a great finish. And so, you know, I struck up a conversation like I always do. And we start to talk, and the young man and I have a lot in common because we're both media people. And then the dad says, do you know so-and-so? And I looked at him, I said, yes. And then we start talking, and we know several people the same. And it's just, it's amazing and surprising and wonderful all at once that you can just strike up a conversation because it said NASCAR on his shirt, and then find out you have mutual friends. And now the son goes to school here in Arizona, which is where I am for the winter, and we're going to get together. And so now I have more friends and family, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, that's how we grow the sport. My goal has always been, since I started in this, because when I started in this with Tony and was really thrust into the middle of the NASCAR garage at the height of it, because I took Tony from USAC, from, winning his Triple Crown in USAC, to IndyCar, and to winning the pole for the Indy 500, and to come within 29 laps of winning the Indy 500 before he blew an engine, to what was Busch Series then,
right?
And probably the prettiest race car I've ever seen anybody drive, which is that number 44 Shell Pontiac.
Oh, yeah.
The black and white and red and yellow one. And then to Cup with Home Depot and Joe Gibbs Racing.
Yeah.
And when I came in there were very few women. There were not even a lot of women in the media.
Right.
And you had to prove yourself every minute of every day, and you had to stay above the fray to make sure that you were respected for why you're there and what you're doing and the job you do.
Yeah.
And so my goal has always been to make it better than it was when I got there, and make it easier for young women, not only young drivers, young women, to come in and be accepted and have the opportunities, but not every woman can be a driver. They can be a crew person, they can be an engineer, they can be in marketing, they can be in public relations, and they all need to have the opportunity to excel at it because they have a passion for the sport, no matter what series it is, whether it's the dirt track at Huset's or Knoxville or Daytona or Indy. It's the same game. So hopefully I do that.
When I talk to gals, of course, a lot of them, especially if they're younger, what is it you want to do? What's your goal? They want to be the next World of Outlaws champ or the NASCAR, this or that. And I always talk to them, especially if they're younger, still in high school or whatever. And I'm like, I love your passion. But what else do you enjoy? Because everybody can't be the driver. We need engineers, we need tire specialists, we need PR and bookkeeping and travel and all the things for those teams. And to be realistic, we have to think, what else can I do? What's my plan B if I can't be the driver? And that's something that I try to encourage and talk to women about, that it takes so many people to put that driver on the track. And if you're not the guy or the gal driving the car, how can you stay involved in motorsports and still, for me, I never had the desire to be the driver. My son was a race car driver. My granddaughters drive race cars. I never had that desire, but I love the marketing and the PR and the people I meet. It takes all of us, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It takes a village. And what I always tell these young ladies, and young men for that matter, the young boys who, they go, I want to be the next Tony Stewart, or I want to be the, next now Kyle Larson, or the next Elio Castroneves, or the next Scott Dixon, or John Force. Pick a sport. And I always tell them, why don't you be the first authentic you?
I love that.
The most important thing is to be authentic, to be yourself. The way people will connect with you is if you're real.
Yes.
If you aren't real, if you put on a facade that you can't maintain, and unfortunately, you and I both, we've been here a day or two, we've seen drivers that flame out because they can't keep up the image that they think they should be, or who they think they should be. Yeah. Then you look at somebody like Elio Castroneves, who has done this for the better part of 30 years. He wouldn't want anybody to know that, but I mean, you look at his age, it's realistically, and he does it at the same level he's always done it. And he is, because the Elio that you watch on TV, that exuberance, that passion, that fire, that everything is the same Elio that you'll have a cup of iced coffee or a cup of iced tea with in the paddock during the quiet time on the track. They're the exact same guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why everybody connects with him.
Sure.
And so on and so on and so on. So they need, the young kids need to be authentic. They need to also know, if this road doesn't work, try another one. Okay. If you're not meant to be Steve Kinzer or Donnie Schatz, who I've had the pleasure and the honor of knowing Donnie Schatz since he was 14 years old, and watched him race his very first race and was fairly convinced he wasn't going to live long enough to do what he's done, but somehow he figured it all out, and he had the great support of his family, his parents and his family. But not every kid that climbs in a sprint car is going to be Steve or Sammy or Donnie or, Logan Shugart or whatever. So, okay, that doesn't work. What about a dirt late model? What about, a pavement midget in the Midwest, or a non-wing sprint car where there's 360s running everywhere, where they have 30 to 50 cars in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin on a Saturday night of kids who are just trying to learn how to do it.
Yes.
And they do it well.
Absolutely. And I love what you say about being authentic, because that doesn't just apply to race car drivers. That applies to everyone. The people that you know and you like and you connect with, it's typically because they're real. I say that they're real. They're who they are day, night, Christmas Day, July 4th, whatever it might be. They're the same person. And when you talk to them, who you're getting. You never know, you never know sometimes with a NASCAR driver which one you're going to get on a certain day. And
well, there's a couple of them that come to mind.
I know. I probably have some KB stuff somewhere here.
Yeah.
Because he's my, I have several favorite drivers. He just happens to be one of them, but you never know
which one you're going to get.
And yet, there's other drivers. I mean, Chase Elliott, he's pretty much the same guy every day, unless you ruffle his feathers.
Yeah, Martin Truex is the same thing. Martin Truex is the most true to himself human being I've ever met.
Yeah.
He's
so even keel.
He is. And he has a heart bigger than is measurable, because he's stayed with Sherry. He's been with her, by her side as she goes through all of that. He's a big supporter of Sherry Strong and helping raise the money for the charity. Yeah. And yet he is the same guy.
Yeah.
One of the Corvette drivers that I've had the pleasure to work with is a young man named Antonio Garcia, and he drives the number 3 Corvette. Okay. And Antonio is the most soft-spoken, quiet. He's a Spaniard, but he's very soft-spoken, very quiet young man. He gets in that car and he's like a transformer. He pushed that shield down and locks it, and a whole nother human being comes out behind the wheel. I mean, not bad, just unbelievable talent, aggression when he needs to have it, controlled aggression. He's a winner. He's a champion. He takes the helmet off, pulls the shield up, takes the helmet off, and he's back to the really quiet, soft-spoken guy. There are those who do that very, very well. Right. They do what they need to do in the car, but on the outside of the car, they're people. They're real people.
And that they are real people. And that's the thing that, NASCAR fans and people that watch the sport put people on a pedestal. And that's not fair either, because they are real people and they have real lives and they have ups and downs just like you and I do. And we say, oh, well, don't take your work home and don't take your personal life to your job. That's a lot of times impossible. And so we don't always know what's happening in their personal lives behind the scenes. And I always try to think where they might be coming from, because everybody has bad days, right? Whether it's driving the car or working with the fans or whatever. But we forget that they are real people with real lives, with real problems. And we shouldn't put them on a pedestal and expect them to be perfect or so much better than yes, they set an example for thousands of other young men and women.
Children, yeah, they do.
I get that. But we also have to remember that they're human beings.
And they deserve the room to be human.
Right.
You don't know if someone's grandma is ill.
Right.
You don't know these things about them. They are subject to the same things we are. We're 4,000 miles from home, and the neighbor calls and says your burglar alarm just went off.
Right.
Well, they probably have the same thing happen.
Yeah.
They're just lucky enough to maybe have a caretaker who can go over, or a good friend. But
yeah.
I mean, they are, and that's the person who has shown us that more. I mean, a lot of drivers are really, really good at that. But I tell you, one person this year that I've had the absolute honor to work around and get to know is Roman Grosjean. And here is a man who looked like the phoenix rising out of the fire. By all intents and purposes, he probably should have died in that F1 crash last year, the last race.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Right.
For the reasons that none of us know and probably will never know. He has come to America.
Mm-hmm.
He has turned into an incredible IndyCar driver.
Yes.
The fans love him.
Yes.
He is gracious to them. He is adorable to be around. The media love him.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, he was an F1 driver, and we all would have said, oh, he's an F1 driver. Don't pay any attention to him. Not true. He is an amazing human being. And he, when he started telling us all stories about buying the motorhome and putting his wife and kids in the motorhome once they got done with school in France, and going all over the country in the motorhome so they could decide where they wanted to live in America. Mm-hmm. And it was adorable. It was all the things that we forget. It was like Scotty McLaughlin does America. It's like he's in awe of Bed Bath & Beyond. I'm like, I go into Bed Bath & Beyond and go, oh my, I gotta go. But Scotty McLaughlin says, Judy, we don't have this where I come from.
Right.
And Roman Grosjean talked about going to Mount Rushmore. Oh, yeah. And how staggeringly beautiful that was for him. And he'd never seen anything like that. And I'm thinking to myself, you have the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe and a few million other things, not to mention Le Mans, but he was absolutely mesmerized by Mount Rushmore. So it's been really fun because we all got to get brought back to the reason we do this. And then you see somebody like Pato and Renas who win with such joy, such joy that, and you went, oh yeah, that's why we do this. Oh yeah, that's why we do this.
And I think one of the reasons that he might find joy in the motorhome and all that is because he did survive, and he has a different outlook on things.
Oh, he does.
And the fact that the people drove in the motorhome looking for where they want to live. What a smart thing to do.
I know. I would have never thought of that.
I would have never thought of that. And then like Mount Rushmore, how many people that live in the United States and maybe even live within 3 hours, let's say, of there, have never been there?
I've never been. I know. Yeah.
Because you tend to take for granted the things that are close by.
Or that they'll always be there.
It'll always be there. I live less than an hour from Lake Michigan. And do you know, it's been 3 summers since I've even been there.
And it's such a beautiful, but we all do that. So it's really fun to watch in all of these, in all of these series. We get it more in IndyCar and sports car, but
Yeah.
it's happening in NASCAR. It's happening a little bit in NHRA. These kids or these people coming in from, I wanted to try this. I didn't know if I can do it or not, and the people, they remind you that there is a reason why we are all still so passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes me want to work even harder to make sure there is a place for this to go on after I've finished running around to 30 racetracks a year, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished, and I'm proud of the people that I've worked with. Some of them I, put my face in my hands and went, oh my gosh. But, it's been a great ride. And I'm very, very grateful to a lot of people who gave me a chance when they didn't have to.
Well, and especially like you say, when you started, a woman doing what you did or anything in motorsports was pretty much unheard of. And you broke through, and you showed them that it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman doing that job. It's about credibility. It's about knowledge. It's about, being capable of doing what you need to do. And that's the same as a race car driver. I talk to so many gals. I'm like, the car doesn't know if you're a girl or a boy.
No,
just get in and drive.
Yeah, and do your best. And if it doesn't measure up to where you think it should, take a step back and go, is it me? Is it the car? Do I just not know enough? And keep in mind that there's some of these guys that have been at it 20 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, Donnie Schatz has 10 championships and 10 Knoxville National wins because he worked hard at it. Same with Sammy and Steve and all those guys. But I do have one story that's really funny. I think it's funny. When Tony was in the Busch series, we were running IndyCar because he had to fulfill his contract to John Menard.
Okay.
And finish out his IndyCar contract, which was actually IRL then. But, he had to honor his contract to John Menard and then also run the Busch series for Joe Gibbs. So we were getting toward the end of the season. We were done with IRL, and he was going to run the last 8 races of the NASCAR Busch series. So I went to the NASCAR trailer and I knocked on the door, and Mike Helton came to the door and he looked at me and he said, "Who are you?" And I introduced myself, and I had the Shell shirt on then because he was in the Shell car in the Busch series. And I said, "I was just wondering if I could speak to you and Mr. Hunter about Tony Stewart, because he's going to come to Cup next year, and he's not Jeff Gordon, he's Tony Stewart, but he has an incredible amount of talent. And I just want everybody to give him a chance. And I'm going to make sure that he is worthy of it and he earns it, what I can control. But I'd like for you guys to know that." And Mike Helton, who is giant, he is such a big man.
Yeah.
He towers over me almost twice as tall as I am. And he looked at me and he said, "Wow." I said, "What?" He said, "I don't think I've ever had anybody ask to come into the red trailer." I said, "Well, Dale Sr. comes here all the time." And he goes, "That's Dale Sr. That's a whole different thing." He said, "I don't think I've ever had anybody else ask to come in." So I went in, I sat down with Mr. Helton, Mr. Hunter, and Bill Jr. He was still alive. And I asked him to give him a chance, and I told him that he might not be the easiest to work with because he was very passionate about what he did. And I would work on that as best I could, but to give him a chance because I thought he would be good for NASCAR and that he would do something. Of course, he and Robbie Gordon get in a fist fight the first day of practice at Daytona. And I'm like, and Helton says to me, he's going to be good, huh? And I went, oh my God. But we survived, and he did. And when I was at his Hall of Fame dinner, I was honored to be invited there, and Mr. Helton was there. And he was with a group of people, and I went walking by, and he said, "You aren't going to say hi?" And I said, "Well, I didn't want to interrupt you. You were talking to all these nice people." And he said, "Come here." And he put his arm around me, and he said, "I want you to meet Judy Dominic." He said, "She's the one we have to blame for Tony Stewart. If she hadn't brought him here, we wouldn't have had to put up with all that." I looked up at him, and I went, "Really?" And he went, "No." He said, "Thank you. He was everything you said he would be, and then some."
And more.
So sometimes you have to take a leap of faith and just hope that you have to believe enough in yourself to know that you can do it.
Mhm.
But you have to be authentic. And I was me. I went in there with like, oh boy, this could go whatever way, and I could be in big trouble. But if you don't take that leap, you don't ever know what might happen.
No, that's so true. And you know, one of my husband's favorite sayings is what's the worst that could happen? They could say, no, we don't want to talk. You know, there's 100 things they could have said. And look at the fun and the joy and the excitement and the drama that Tony Stewart brought to NASCAR.
Yeah,
we can't replace. There's never going to be another Tony Stewart.
No. And people say to me, "Well, Kyle Larson's as good as Tony." And I said, in some aspects, he might be a better driver. But what he doesn't have, his fire is just channeled way differently.
It is.
And while he's going to win a lot of races and a lot of championships, but he will never bring the fireworks with it. He will just be that guy who puts his helmet on and goes and does it better than anybody else.
Right.
You know, one of these days I would just like to, we never thought Jeff Gordon had a temper, and we never thought Jeff Gordon got mad. And all of a sudden we're looking at Jeff Gordon running over the hoods of 3 cars to get to Kevin Harvick at Bristol and try to beat the tar out of him, and get in a fight with, Jeff Burton on the backstretch at, Charlotte. And you go, so maybe in Kyle somewhere there's just a teeny bit of fire, but there's a ton of talent that's we haven't even tapped. Yeah, it's not even tapped yet.
We haven't even seen the scope of the talent in that young man. And I followed him when he was in NASCAR before, and I always just thought he's so versatile, and I like that about him, that he drove a lot of different kinds of cars and everything. Yeah. But the thing about Tony Stewart, when he sat down at the press conference, you never knew what he was going to say.
Nope. And I would just be standing in the back of the room like this, and the media all would turn around and they go, "There you go, Jude." I go, "Thanks."
Yeah.
So because they would goad him, and they did it on purpose, and he would take the bait sometimes. Yeah. And it was like, we'd walk in and I'd go, "Now don't let him." "No, I won't. No, I won't. I got this. And then boom. But it was okay. It was fun. I would not trade 1 minute of the 7 years with that man for anything.
No, I can't.
Or any of the other drivers I've worked with. And now it's a whole new crop. And, IndyCar is so fun now because we have all these kids that are just crazy fast.
They are.
And they don't know what it feels like to hit a wall at 240 miles an hour yet. Hopefully they don't find out. But I mean, we have 10 kids under the age of 25 that are rock stars.
Yeah.
And the old guys are going, where'd they come from? But 10 years ago, they were those kids.
Right.
So, what's going on in racing right now is awesome. Chevrolet has the youngest average age of drivers in NASCAR. So between all of our teams, we have the youngest group of drivers, which is exciting because that means long-term, we can do something, and hopefully they'll do something. So.
Yeah. And didn't Chevrolet, now let's plug them a little bit. Didn't they just win the manufacturers championship? Correct?
Yes. Drivers and owners in Cup.
In Cup.
We won the manufacturers in Xfinity
Okay.
as well. And we're about to win manufacturers, drivers, and team in IMSA with Corvette Racing, and they'll finish 1-2. And then Cadillac, we've won the manufacturers, but it's going to be a heck of a battle down to see whether we can get the driver's title and the owner's title. The 31 wheeling Cadillac is going to have to beat that Acura of Michael Shank Racing with Ricky Taylor in it. And so it'll be a great race at Petite this weekend.
Yeah.
And Brittany Force is second in the points, going in top fuel for going into the final.
Right.
And then Greg Anderson and Erica Enders are 38 points apart, and both of them going for their fifth title. Greg is already the winningest pro stock driver ever. So he broke all of Warren Johnson's records, except titles, but he's broke all the rest of them. But he has more wins than Warren. Nobody else has more wins than Greg in pro stock. So even Bob Glidden, I thought maybe Bob Glidden would have more wins, but he didn't. But they didn't run as many races back then either when Glidden was racing. So we have a lot that can happen this weekend too.
Yeah, and I just, I listened to Sirius Radio, and there was I'm pretty sure it was there that I heard a gentleman from Chevrolet that was
Mr. Campbell. He's my boss, big boss.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that was telling about their success and everything, and he said that our goal every year is to win the manufacturers championship.
Correct.
And everything, and I loved hearing from that side of it. It's not just the racers, it's the people like him, and it means a lot to the whole team, everybody involved. And I can't say enough about motorsports and how much I love it.
Well, you do a great job with this, and I know the women in racing appreciate everything you do, and thank you so much for doing this, and don't give it up. It has such value. You just don't know how much value it has.
Oh, I appreciate that, especially coming from you, because that's a huge compliment, Judy. That really makes my day.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there anything I haven't asked you about that you'd like to share, or I just don't want to leave anything out. You're so fun to talk to.
Well, when you go back when I had the motorcycle dealership, I had an AMA race team, and I had 2 750 super bikes, and I had a 1,000cc endurance bike, 2 600 super sports, and a TZ 250. And we went and ran the AMA circuit as a privateer team, which would be like being Furniture Row Racing in Cup.
Yeah.
And against all the factory Yamaha, Suzuki, Honda, Ducati, And then when I was in the motorcycle business, I had Yamaha, BMW, and Ducati in my dealership. And I was fortunate enough to have been voted the president of the U.S. dealer board for each one of those brands, because I was the only female that owned a dealership.
That's very
and Yamaha, the Japanese were a little like, what? The Italians loved it, which was sometimes problematic, but we worked our way through it. And the Germans were like, seriously? But when I sold a lot of motorcycles for them, then they got over the fact that I was female.
Sure.
And I love motorcycle racing. I still, to this day, I sit and watch MotoGP, or I tape it if I'm not home, because that's such a skill set that if you're not around it, you don't understand the skills that go into that.
Yes.
And those, not that to take anything away from anybody that races on 4 wheels, but they have 2 wheels in road racing or flat track. They have a 1-inch patch of tire on the track surface, and they have 2 wheels, and they are the roll cage. The roll cage around them. So when it goes wrong, it usually goes really wrong.
Bad. Yeah.
But on the other hand, when it doesn't, it's the most amazing thing to watch. And so I've stayed attached to that. I was really lucky back in the day to have been the only importer in the United States for Marvick wheels, Marchesini wheels, and Brembo brakes for motorcycles. And I sponsored Team Roberts in what was then called MotoGP, 500cc MotoGP for Wayne Rainey and Eddie Lawson and John Kaczynski and Kenny Roberts Jr. And to this day, I get to call Wayne Rainey a friend, and I'm really proud of that. He and I had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun together, as well as all the kids that rode for me. And I don't know, I love midgets. I love sprint cars. It's hard when you do the job I do. You have to make sure that you don't walk over the fan line. But when I go to a motorcycle race, or I go to a dirt track, or I hopefully get to go someday to an F1 race, but if I don't, I'm watching on my television, I geek out, and I am the biggest race fan on the planet. When I do my job, you can't do that. You have to maintain that distance of professionalism. And sometimes things go awry that you have to respond to. And so you have to be a professional. Absolutely. But I am still a huge fan of racing. And the day I don't work on a pit road or a pit lane or whatever, I will go and I will cheer my brains out just like all the rest of them in the grandstands.
So I have an interesting story to share with you. So I met my second husband, and he was a big motorcycle fan. He had ridden motorcycles since he was little. He has a Yamaha FZ1 still to this day. It has, I don't know, 70 some thousand miles on it.
Wow.
And it's as good today as it was when he bought it. It's a great bike. But anyway, so when I met him, he said the fun is not on the back. And so one day on my lunch hour, I went to the Secretary of State's office and I took the written test, and I passed it. And so then I had my little card so I could, ride with a seasoned driver. So I took it home and showed it to him, and he was blown away. And I was 50 years old. And we went and bought a little Honda 250 or something little to learn so I could learn how to ride. And I had a Honda Shadow, and then I had a Honda VTX 1300R, and I rode, and I had that until I had back surgery, and I just couldn't drive the bike anymore. But we used to go to Mid-Ohio to the motorcycle races.
Best track.
I bet 10 years in a row we went there. It was like the thing we looked forward to the most the whole summer. Nikki Hayden, the Bostrom boys. Number one, what was Duhamel?
Miguel Duhamel.
Miguel Duhamel. We absolutely loved those guys and going
those
there.
Super bikes. Yeah, so fast.
Oh my gosh.
So fast.
And fast. Oh my goodness.
We
sat in the keyhole, and it was just, you had to go at 6 a.m. to put your thing up so you'd have shade. It was just our favorite thing to do. And now we're into all kinds of racing, but that still is where our hearts are, we love.
It's hard to shake it. Those things, you sit there and listen to them go up through the gears, and that thing's screaming at 15,000 RPMs.
Yeah.
It's really hard to beat that.
Oh gosh. And Michael Jordan had a team.
Yes, he did.
At the time. And then when he became involved in NASCAR, I had people say, wow, he's interested in racing. I said, oh, he's been in racing a long time. You just didn't know it because you didn't follow motorcycle racing, and the one, and I really never had a lot of fear. And so the one time at Mid-Ohio, they were offering, you could pay to ride on the back, and they would take you around the track, right? At how many fast? I don't know, but it was fast. And so I kept saying to my husband, I want to do it. I want to do it. He said, go do it. As I start to walk over to where you go to pay your money, it starts to rain.
Oh,
And I
bummer.
never got to do it. And I said, God was telling me I was too old. I shouldn't be doing it. So he caused the rain to come. But I would have loved it. I would have loved to do that, to ride on the.
I was writing a piece because I did a lot of writing also during the motorcycle days, the truck series days. Then it became, I couldn't do any, I didn't have time. I did a radio show for a while out of Denver, Colorado, and I loved that. But I was doing a piece for Yamaha's International Magazine, and it was when Moto, the whole Moto GP was at Laguna Seca.
Mm-hmm.
And so they asked me, do you want to ride around the track? And I said, with who? And they said, with Johnny K. And I said, yeah, I will. And they looked at me and I said, how am I supposed to write a story about what they do if I don't? I've watched them for years and years and years. I buy all the stuff that makes them do what they do for my guys and other guys, but I don't know how they do what they do.
I know.
So they put me on, it was a super bike. It wasn't his GT bike because they weren't that dumb. And so they put me on a super bike. It was a world super bike and it was a Yamaha. But I'm on the back, because they only have the one little saddle. So I'm he said, okay, squish down in here as far as you can behind me. And so then back then we had the quick fills on the tank where the quick fill dropped into the tank. So I pushed it in and I held on with my fingers like that and had my arms around him. And I had full leathers on, my helmet, my boots, my gloves, the whole thing, knee pucks and everything. And he said, okay, just move with me. I said, no problem. Mm-hmm. So, we take off out of the pits, head up that hill at Laguna Seca. And I'm thinking to myself, who's going to call my mother and tell her I died on a motorcycle at Laguna Seca? And I thought, nope, I did the right thing. So we went the first lap and came down through the corkscrew, and I'm screaming at the top of my lungs because it is the coolest thing I've ever done.
I'm so jealous.
Oh my God. We pulled down pit lane and he says, he turns around and he goes, are you okay? I said, do another one. He said, he looked at them all and they went, you want to do it? And he said, she's perfect. She knows exactly what to do.
Right.
He said she leaned when I leaned, she did everything. And he said, he said, because sometimes they get people on there that wiggle all around and they go, nope. And they'll just back it off and wick it down and just coast around. And so we took another lap and I will never forget that. That was the most incredible ride. The second best ride I probably ever had was in a stock car with Dale, in Illumina with Dale Earnhardt Sr. at Daytona. And we were giving some customer rides and he looked at me and he went, hey, I said, yes. He said, you want to go for a ride? I said, yeah. And he looked at my boss and my boss said, if she's dumb enough to go ride with you, go ahead. And I got in and he did everything he possibly could to try to scare me because I'm watching the third turn wall coming at him and we're only like this far from the back stretch wall, I swear. And it was a hoot. And then the other best ride I ever had was in a Corvette with Juan Pablo at Indy. And that was just crazy. He is so crazy good. It's unbelievable. But
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous of your experiences because I would have gotten in all three of those rides without thinking because I just don't have the fear. I mean, when you get on and you're going, that's a different story. But I just would not have hesitated because it's just, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
Well, like I said, I've been very, very blessed. I've been very lucky. I've worked hard, but I'm grateful for every opportunity I've had. And I'm not done yet. I'm not done.
Oh, I know you're not. I still see the fire in your eyes.
There.
Yeah.
I'm sad that this coming weekend is the last weekend. It's like, geez, But then January will be here before we know it, and we'll be scrambling to get to Rolex. So,
Right.
you know,
Absolutely. It just goes so quick. I mean, 36 races of NASCAR went by in a flash.
Yeah.
And we had 2 weeks off for the Olympics,
I know.
So I'm so excited for this year. I went to my first Indy race, Judy, in Nashville this year.
Awesome. So awesome.
Amazing. And I've got my tickets for my first Indy 500.
Good.
So I'm so excited about that. And,
Where are your seats?
You know what? I'm not sure because I reached out to somebody that I know, but I'll let you know where they are. They're good seats because I had a connection that I met through this.
Well, we do. Yeah.
But
you will. There's one thing about the Indy 500. All of the other races, the big races in any series are amazing. But there is just something about the start of the Indy 500 that you don't see anyplace else. You don't feel it. When that place is full of 300,000 plus people, the drivers feel it, everybody feels it. It's just crazy how fun it is.
Well, and I'm told that the pre-race, the whole pre-race thing is worth everything to go. And that's I can't wait. I'm looking.
Kleenex in your pocket though, because some of it'll make you cry. It's just
I'm sure
so touching, some of the things they do.
They're
very
excited.
Good about honoring, the history and honoring those who came before us. They're very good about that.
Yeah. Well, Judy, I could talk to you for hours, but I know that you probably need to go have dinner, and we will definitely see each other again.
I hope so.
I'm so honored and pleased that you agreed to be on my podcast. I love the stories you've told and your passion and what you've shared. And we're going to have to do this again because we didn't get through near the stories, I'm sure.
No, we didn't, but I'd love to. Maybe we can talk again before the season starts next year and we can see what we got in front of us with the new cars and all that stuff. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy.
You have a good evening.
You too.